What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the reveal of the number 14 team in my 2022 NFL Power Rankings with the reveal of the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a team that is really interesting to me because they so easily could have, looked at this division and said, all right, we got the Chiefs. They're always going to be tough. The Chargers trying to maximize their, rookie contract window, getting Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson and all this stuff. The Broncos just acquired Russell Wilson, but he's up there in age. Maybe just got to live this one out for a couple of years until he gets older. And, we'll take a step back. We're kind of a middling team anyway, and we'll become a more serious contender in a couple of years. They so easily could have taken that route, right? Their quarterback was even up for an extension, but they said, nope, it. Let's go get this thing. Let's extend Carr, Max Crosby. We're going to keep Darren Waller where there was trade rumors. We're going to go get Chandler Jones and, of course, Davante Adams. They're going for this thing, man. So I respect it. I can't sit here on this channel and preach, go for it. And it's all about trying to win a Super Bowl and not respect their aggressive nature. So it's going to be a really entertaining season for this team. And it's going to be a really fun video to talk about a lot of these kind of question marks and if they can, get it done in what is going to be a really wild AFC. But before we do get started, I do ask a huge favor from you guys. If you could please take a second to hit that like button down below. I know it's stupid. I know it's simple, but it really does help tell YouTube that you enjoy the video and to push it out towards other NFL fans, help this channel grow. It really does impact this channel in a big way, so I really appreciate it if you could just take a second to hit that down below. And if you enjoy, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications so you do not miss any of these deep dives as we count down to the number one team in my power rankings. And we're going to start here by recapping this team's offseason that was incredibly busy. So, of course, the entire staff is going to get turned over here. We're going to dive into this staff after this portion of the video, but let's mostly focus on the roster portion here. So a lot of turnover, both key additions and key losses, as well as a lot of just smaller depth pieces getting interchanged here. So let's focus on the big stuff here. They're losing Bryan Edwards, Zay Jones, a pair of starting wide receivers there, but supplementing that and some, getting the best receiver in football in Davante Adams, as well as some smaller additions in Keelan Cole and Demarcus Robinson there, so upgrading where they lost at wide receiver. They do lose Denzel Good to retirement, but he only played 17 snaps. Hard to know if they knew that retirement was coming or not. It's already kind of a questionable offensive line, and all they really did was add Dylan Parham. So we're going to have a lengthy conversation about this offensive line. That's going to be suspect. Not really doing a whole lot there. But then as you look at the defense, they do lose Yannick Ngakoue in a trade, though, where they go and get Rock Ya-Sin, a much-needed CB2 for this team, after they sign Chandler Jones, who they think will be better. So getting better there in that key loss. Some other big additions as well. They signed Bilal Nichols from the Bears. They get Trayvon Mullen back healthy as well. So certainly a positive as far as the big movement for this roster. Definitely some notable turnover with the depth and the rotational players as well. They definitely looked at this front seven and said, we need to overhaul that group, especially the interior defensive line, adding a lot more meat there, letting smaller interior guys go that were better fits for Gus Bradley's stunting D-line. Three techniques, guys like Solomon Thomas, Quentin Jefferson, letting those guys go, bringing in some more meat there. And I mean meat. Vernon Butler, Neil Farrell, Tyler Lancaster. It's about 1,000 pounds between the three of those guys right there. They also add Jayon Brown as kind of a why not signing for a linebacker, and they're letting KJ Wright, Corey Littleton go. They didn't see a need for them. And then one more little addition there, getting Duron Harmon, a Patriots favorite for this Patriots-heavy coaching staff coming in that I now want to talk about. So the entire staff is being flipped on its head here even including special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia, who they wanted to keep, but Green Bay was like, we need to pay all of our money for a special teams coordinator, and the Raiders were like, we'll be fine. But Josh McDaniels gets hired as head coach here, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited about not just Josh McDaniels, but all three of these big name coaches coming in here, with Mick Lombardi as offensive coordinator and Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator. Viewers of this channel know I love Patrick Graham and what he does on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be Josh McDaniels' offense, where it's a pro-style offense through and through. The Patriots last year ran more gap running than anybody. That's a lot of power run game, under center, even I formation. They let Jacob Johnson follow him over, their fullback. So think of those 2 tight end packages, under center, a lot of 12 personnel. So they will get more modern and spread and all of those modern principles. That's the beauty of Josh McDaniels. He's a throwback mind who is not afraid to open up the playbook, take things from other teams. He's really nifty with trick plays as well. Hard to know if that's him or Belichick or what, but I've always been impressed by the play calling in New England. I think he knows, has a good rhythm for when to mix in a screen, when to go play action. Like, he's just a very brilliant offensive mind. It was only a matter of time before Josh McDaniels got another crack as a head coach, as it just didn't work out in Denver about 10 years ago. I think he's learned a lot since then. So I really like the hiring for a quote-unquote first-time head coach. He ranks 18th among head coaches for me, and I'm very optimistic that this is going to work here. But you also have Mick Lombardi under him. He's going to be an extension of Josh McDaniels. That's pretty self-explanatory. But someone that does have a lot of experience working under some interesting minds, most notably Greg Roman for the 49ers, that read option sort of offense that they had with Colin Kaepernick that we now see extended in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. So perhaps some creative QB run stuff at least available, but you're not doing that with Derek Carr, obviously. And then Chip Kelly bringing a little more of that spread influence, even more like, you could look down with Chan Gailey and Jeremy Bates, like just a lot of different influences that he's going to be able to sprinkle in some stuff. And he's actually the son of Mike Lombardi, who's a former Patriots GM, has a great book about the Patriots dynasty that I highly recommend. And he's only 33 years old, so definitely got my eyes on Mick Lombardi. And if things go well here, someone that could be one of these rising offensive minds around the league. And then defensively, I get even more excited about Patrick Graham. I was raving about Patrick Graham for the Giants in 2020 when they kind of had a little bit of a pleasant surprise of a season. And he comes from a lot of different coaching backgrounds. Most notably is the Patriots and Bill Belichick, where he learned that sort of 3-4 multiple front with your hybrid outside backers and the Belichick scheme that we've detailed on this channel. But he doesn't just have that as an influence. He was with Steve Spagnuolo, which is a 4-3 man-heavy defense. He was there for 2 years for the Giants. So he has some of that influence. And then he's got some of that Mike Pettin blitz-heavy attacking 3-4 like fire zone defense. So he's got really everything in his tool belt here. But what's really special about Patrick Graham that I respect so much about him is that when he got control of his own defense after he left Miami in 2019, where he was coaching a Belichick defense with Brian Flores, he comes to New York and kind of sprinkles in those different influences and ended up crafting what to me is possibly the most unique scheme in the league right now, that at least in 2020, when things were going a little bit more smoothly for the Giants, it really confused teams. And I loved this scheme. It was inspirational to me to see a coach really building something we've never seen a ton of in the NFL, and at least what he did for New York. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I don't know if the personnel here is exactly catered to run this scheme. We'll see ultimately what Patrick Graham does, but he ran a 3-3-5 odd base where it's like a standard nickel, except you've got, for your edge players, one is a big-bodied, almost hybrid defensive end. It was Leonard Williams for them, someone that can defend the run, allow you to stay in base, or stay in a nickel base on earlier downs, provide some of that beef. And then he used more of a hybrid outside backer type opposite of him, where you could run some of that Belichick stuff with them dropping into coverage, cutting off crossing routes, stunting, blitzing, just straight up rushing as an edge rusher. A lot of that flexibility just provided so much versatility for that front. And then on top of that, using a guy like Jabril Peppers as a bandit safety linebacker, where they ran a ton of 3 safety base defense, which allowed him not just to have a creative, confusing front, but to really mix up the pre-snap coverage looks. Just a million different rotations where you'll have Jabril Peppers maybe dropping into the top third of a cover 3 defense, or going from the slot, rotating up into a cover 2, mixing up that picture for what the quarterback thinks he's seeing, ending up with a bunch of just really creative zone coverages. And when you think Belichick defense, you think man heavy, right? Well, this is not really a Patriots defense necessarily, or at least it wasn't for the Giants the last 2 years. They've been one of the more zone-heavy teams in the league, running more cover 3 than just about anybody. And the Raiders ran more cover 3 than anybody under Gus Bradley, so these guys are going to be comfortable, at least the retaining players are going to be comfortable with all of the cover 3 that they run. So that's just a snapshot. I'm a huge Patrick Graham fan. I rank them 16th for defensive coaching, which is pretty impressive for a new staff coming in here, having to implement all that stuff. And once things kind of get established here, I do look at this staff and see a group that can be very quickly, in my mind, a top 10 staff overall in the league. So very optimistic about this coaching staff, and I can't wait to see kind of what they do with their own new regime altogether here, all former Patriots guys. So very positive outlook for this new staff. But now let's get to the roster portion of the video. We're going to start by breaking down this offense, where for me they rank 9th in passing game and 21st in run game. And this is a super unique roster as far as how it's constructed, as you see there, ranking 1st in the league for me for weapons, but 32nd as far as pass blocking goes. So before we even talk about these players on an individual basis, I think this is an offense that's going to be so matchup dependent, where if they go against those more dominant pass rushes, like, they might freaking get overwhelmed and it's not going to matter who their receivers are. Whereas inversely, like, they could go against teams that maybe have a nice pass rush but have like no cover guys on the back end, and they're just lighting you up because they have so many different playmakers. It's a unique looking offense, and on top of that, I think you have a quarterback here in Derek Carr, who ranks 13th for me, is a very good player, but to me is one of those players that's in more of a tier with Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Ryan Tannehill, of guys that are a little bit more dependent on the structure of the offense and are quarterbacks that maybe you win with, not quarterbacks you win because of, guys that just tend to be a little bit more dependent on the structure of the offense, the protection, the receivers getting open, the play caller. Again, Derek Carr is a very good quarterback. I rank him 13th, and he doesn't just provide really good play in structure, on time. The arm talent, the accuracy, the ability to read defenses, it's all there. And there are certainly weeks when things are working, Derek Carr's gonna light you up. And I even rank him ahead of, say, Kirk Cousins or Ryan Tannehill, because I do think he adds more as far as play extension. I think he's got more physical tools to do that. He's faster to break the pocket and get on the move. And I think he has a better natural arm to be a really good off-platform thrower of the football. So again, he's a very good quarterback. But I will say with Derek Carr, something that's always frustrated me about watching him, and something that I think has consistently held him back throughout his career and prohibited him from taking that next leap to being whatever you want to call it, a top 10 quarterback, an elite quarterback, a game-breaking quarterback. And it's that lack of natural poise in the pocket, that ability to just mindlessly sense pressure, navigate and manipulate the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield to extend plays, whether it's inside the pocket or outside the pocket. He doesn't have that natural feel as a passer. Call it that it factor, if you will, is something people love to say. It's, something people don't like to hear. I think I just put a little bit more context to what that it factor is for me for a quarterback, but that's what's missing with Derek Carr. And I get it. He was more aggressive last year. We did see a more explosive version of Derek Carr where he was taking off and running more consistently. He was making more big plays down the field, and that was great to see. I rank him higher now than I would have this time last year for that reason, but it doesn't mean all of the stuff that has always bothered me about Derek Carr when it comes to that natural feel in the pocket, that natural comfort as a passer. It doesn't mean that that's gone, and it very much showed up in his playoff game, and it shows up pretty consistently on film as well. And to me, what that means is that he becomes a more timid passer. He wants to get the ball out very quickly, more consistently. He's not comfortable under pressure, and that's going to be problematic with the 32nd ranked group of pass protectors in front of him pretty consistently. And while occasionally you will see him see that escape lane in front of him and he'll take off, and once he gets outside the pocket, I like his playmaking ability, but it's when that pressure is closing down, he just is a bit erratic and uncomfortable in those situations. So he's either going to hit that dump off a lot of the times, a check down or that crosser that's short of the sticks. It was so iconic that his season ended by throwing the ball short of the sticks when there was no pressure on fourth down with the game on the line in the playoffs. I can't imagine a better play or example to point to of what has always bothered me about Derek Carr than that play that ended their game against the Bengals in the playoffs. But the other thing he likes to do on third down is he's often that, what I've called in this series and in the past on this channel, is that that drop and shoot passer, where he's going to make that first read. If he doesn't like what he sees, instead of figuring out where the rush is coming from, navigating the pocket, whether it's staying in the pocket or getting out of the pocket to extend the play, more often than not, he's going to just throw that back shoulder. He's going to throw that corner route with outside leverage away from the DB, where either his receiver is going to get it or nobody's going to get it. And that's all good and well. That helps him be a very good quarterback, but that's not what those elite quarterbacks do, right? Those elite quarterbacks understand that's a low percentage play. I need to extend this thing and get a better look, and he just is not comfortable doing that. So, again, a very good quarterback here. I rank him 13th. I think they can win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr if everything else is good around him here, but it does decrease or increase rather that margin for error. And I don't even know how you can really argue that at this point with Derek Carr, but I do know there's Raiders fans that are diehard Carr fans that think he's going to be an MVP and carry this team to an AFC West title and all this stuff, and I don't think he's that level of a player. But it sure as hell does help to bring in Davante Adams to the point where I rank this as the best group of weapons in the entire league. Literally number one here. You get the best receiver in football, Davante Adams. who is the best route runner. He has the best release in the league. He's good after the catch. He's taken that next step as far as contested catch ability, that my ball bitch mentality to go win those tough balls. He does it all, man. He's the alpha. He's number one. You bring him in here. Is he going to be as productive as he was with Aaron Rodgers? No, he's not. I can confidently say that. And it might be to the point where we stop calling him the number one wide receiver in the NFL. But ultimately, he's the reason this gets elevated to the number one ranking, because you can't cover him. As we saw in Green Bay, teams were constantly doubling him. And here in Las Vegas, they actually have other weapons to go to if teams decide to do that. So Hunter Renfrow is here in the slot. Is he the best true slot receiver in the game right now? You know, Cooper Kupp plays the majority of his reps from the slot, but I wouldn't describe him as a true slot. Perhaps I'm forgetting someone, but I don't think that's a bad take to say that he is. He has really crafty route running. I mean, just all of the classic white slot receiver stereotypes are there with Hunter Renfrow. And I think his game's going to be even elevated further here because he's now with the offensive coordinator that had Julian Edelman, that had Wes Welker, an offense that lives, by the way, on option routes. And Hunter Renfrow is one of the best option route receivers in the league. So you're going to see an even better version of Hunter Renfrow here with this offense. I do believe that. Really nice duo there with the receivers. And then let's talk about Darren Waller, who's basically going to be this team's number two. He's a tight end, obviously, but he's going to play a good half of his snaps as a slot wide receiver, as a perimeter receiver where they use him. Hell, he had to convert from receiver to tight end. So he is effectively this team's number two wide receiver, even if sometimes he puts his hand in the dirt. But the ultimate mismatch problem, right? 6'6", 255 pounds, 4.5 speed. Who are you going to cover Darren Waller with? You can't do it with a linebacker. You can't do it with a safety because they're not fast enough. You can't do it with a corner because they're not big enough. So the ultimate mismatch problem, and you're going to see him used in a lot of different creative ways and be the best version of Darren Waller here. So that trifecta, all these guys play off each other really well, and you really can't knock it, right? I think you can potentially knock the depth a little bit, but like Keelan Cole is a good fourth wide receiver, was kind of stashed on the Jets last year, but he's played like solid when given the opportunities. Comes down with, it feels like, one spectacular catch every year, but a decent route runner, decent hands. Like, you could do worse than Keelan Cole as a fourth wide receiver, or at least a fourth target on your offense. And then you have some different kind of skill sets here. You know, Demarcus Robinson, maybe a little bit the same guy as Keelan Cole, but was productive with Patrick Mahomes as a complementary weapon there. And then I love adding Tyron Johnson into the mix here. If you're missing anything with these wide receivers, it's a true deep threat. Of course, Devontae Adams can be that deep threat as well as Darren Waller, but a true just kind of throw him on the outside, send him on a deep post, make him the alert, and force defenses to stay honest. That's what Tyron Johnson was for the Chargers in 2020, but has had a bit of a falling out in this league. Hard to say why. I've heard that coaches don't really, or he doesn't really get along with coaches, but I have the little eye emote on him because if he can kind of win reps from Keelan Cole and just be exactly what I described, stick him on the outside, a guy with a ton of speed, who is a really good fit with Derek Carr. You know, if Tyron Johnson can be the 2020 version of himself, man, this offense is going to be firing as long as the pass pro can be just decent, because he is that kind of last missing piece, is that true deep threat. I think it's those five. Mac Hollins, a really good special teamer. He's actually listed as a starter right now, so it's going to be a big rotation between Cole, Robinson, Johnson, Hollins. They're all kind of adequate depth. Beyond that, I don't see any of these other guys making it at wide receiver, but it doesn't stop there, right? You have a really nice group of receiving backs. Josh Jacobs, incredibly difficult to tackle, hasn't been super consistent when it comes to route running and being that huge impact in the receiving game. But you're going to see about a 50-50 split on passing downs between him and Kenyon Drake, who is a little bit more polished, smoother hands, a better route runner. Making decent money here will be an impact as that check down option for Derek Carr. As I mentioned, he loves to get involved, and Josh Jacobs is as well. So you're always going to have a really nice receiving back out there. And hell, even Brandon Bolden, who's really had limited opportunities in New England, finally got the call last year when James White went down. And you can see why New England has always liked him. He's 32 years old, but finally got significant reps last year and was genuinely a top 10 receiving back last season. So you're really 3 deep with receiving backs, and you've got some depth at tight end that I like as well. This team will go 12 personnel. They will run packages where Waller is a receiver, and you can put Foster Moreau in there as an inline Y tight end. He's a decent blocker and just a all-around average starting caliber tight end that's been buried to me behind Darren Waller. Moreau has actually really good straight line speed, gets slept on in that regard. And even going back to his time in college, it's just always kind of been underutilized in the passing game, but more or less has answered the call when they ask him to do more. So I like Foster Moreau quite a bit as a number 2 tight end. He ranks higher than a lot of starting tight ends that we've had in this series. And then Jacob Hollister can play a little bit too. Just kind of similar stuff about Foster Moreau. Decent athlete, been a little bit underutilized as a receiving tight end, but I do think you're 3 deep at tight end, and all these guys are going to play. Behind that, anybody interesting? Not really at tight end. Running back, you do have Zamir White, a rookie here, brought in the 4th round. Was never really a part of that Georgia passing game because James Cook has been there, so perhaps some hidden ability as a receiver there, but I don't think they're really going to ask much of him. And it's ironic that my comp for him was Damian Harris coming out of Georgia, and here he is for a New England offense, like in a situation where, you know, he probably just isn't going to be asked to be much of a receiving back. But there's your number 1 group of weapons there. Really fun group. And let's now talk about more of the running backs as runners and transition to more of the run game here, where they do rank 9th for me. As I mentioned, this team ranks 21st in the league for run game, and the problem is not the running backs here, right? I think Josh Jacobs is actually very underrated right now. Just hasn't always had that like high level production, but his tape is so good. His jump cut specifically stands out to me. He's so good at reading zone runs and hitting that jump cut where he can either make a guy miss with it, but he can also change lanes or shoot a gap with rapid acceleration. And he's 220 pounds, so he'll hit top speed, run through arm tackles, and then he can arrive with force. So, like, that's really unique about Josh Jacobs and sets him above a lot of backs in this league. It's not going to be just him, though. They have Kenyon Drake, who's a really just ideal number 2 back. Never liked him as a lead back, but here you got the Bama backfield where he's going to catch balls out of the backfield. He'll be a change of pace guy. He's got enough between the tackles ability to keep you honest, but it'll allow them to maybe go a little bit wide zone if you want, and maybe try and hit some of those home run hitting runs, because he does have pretty solid long speed. So just a nice number 2 back there. Now, it is worth noting that they actually did not pick up Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. Personally, I think that's a mistake. I think you could have gotten another cheap year of top 10 running back play in Josh Jacobs, and maybe he has a great year and they give him an extension and that's all an afterthought. But I do think the staff is looking a little bit more towards a heavier dose of gap running. Obviously, Josh McDaniels led the league last year in gap runs, and Zamir White is actually stylistically a better fit for a power run game than Josh Jacobs. To me, is more of a zone runner. So I think that's probably their thought process there. It's not that I don't think Josh Jacobs, can run, power run, but I do think he's better as a zone runner. Whereas Zamir White, give him a lane, let him hit it. And there were flashes running gap at Georgia where I saw Damian Harris. I saw a guy that can be ultra productive as a downhill runner with just speed, acceleration, and power. Again, literally Damian Harris was my pro comp on my draft board for my draft analysis for Zamir White. So that's obviously what they see in him. And I think he'll get sprinkled in. Not going to have a super productive year. You've got too many guys ahead of him here. But I think he can become a top 15 back, just as Damian Harris is. Like, I literally think he's the same player. And another reason I say that is he's not the most creative or shifty runner. He's just a no nonsense downhill back with speed and size. So you've got him there. We mentioned Brandon Bolden, what he did as a receiving back, but even when they asked him to run the ball, he was pretty effective. So I think Josh McDaniels knows what he has in Brandon Bolden, and it's a little bit of a hidden gem. His sample size hasn't been too big. He really, until the last couple of years, at age 31 and 32, really has never really touched the football all that much. But he has yet to show that he can't do whatever they ask him to do. So as a fourth back, that's incredible depth, honestly. The rest of these guys, Amir Abdullah, probably not going to be room for him here. Britton Brown, they draft out of UCLA. I actually didn't get around to watching him, listed at 205. So we'll see if he even makes the team here. My guess is they like him, what they saw from him in the receiving game. That's pretty much it for the running back room. I rank them ninth, the top 10 group as far as the running backs go. With the QB run multiplier, it does take this run game down a little bit compared to some of these offenses that create numbers advantages. Derek Carr is just not a read option threat. It is what it is. They'll work around it. And other than 1 year with Cam Newton, Patriots have never really needed to depend on that either. But it is, a lack of that numbers advantage there for the run game. Before we go any further with the video, I want to take a second to tell you about my friends at SeatGeek. I truly believe that SeatGeek outclasses all of the other ticketing apps. It's where I buy all of my tickets, and for good reason. I really enjoyed partnering with them. They're great with me, but they just have the best app, the best user interface. They have the best prices. You get your tickets immediately. They have customer support. Again, I really think you should be buying your tickets on SeatGeek. If you're going to football games, other sporting events, concerts, do it on SeatGeek. And now using promo code Franchise Guy, you will save $20 on your first purchase. And all the better, you're going to support my channel in the process. So again, that's promo code Franchise Guy on SeatGeek. Let's get back to the video. Now we got to talk about the blocking here because it's not good. Let's start with the skill players, just to kind of clean up everything before we get to the offensive line. Darren Waller is half receiver, not the best blocking tight end. He's a high effort guy, but not some massive boost there. Foster Moreau has been hit or miss as a run blocker. They do bring in Jakob Johnson to be their fullback. He's done a great job for New England, so should be plug and play there. But even with these receivers, I don't love what you're getting on the perimeter. Devontae Adams just has never been a great run blocker. For whatever reason, he's a tough dude, but has never really bought into that aspect of the game. Hunter Renfrow wants to, but just he's light and small, and there's only so much he can do. So just off the bat, you're not getting the best perimeter blocking here. It helps that there'll be a downhill power run game as opposed to a wide zone style offense where those receivers being able to block is maybe a little bit more important. But with the offensive line, they do rank dead last in pass blocking, and the team ranks dead last in run blocking. This is the biggest question mark for this team, no doubt. It's a brutal look for this offensive line right now that just had Denzel Good retire a week ago that they were hoping was going to be their right guard. So at left tackle, you're fine. You're more than fine. You've got Colton Miller, a stud / superstar left tackle. I mean, this guy's gotten better every year, was a rock at left tackle. He's 6'8", he has length, his technique is outstanding. With those long arms, he's able to just latch, play with good pad level, run his feet. Really tough guy to get through and a really tough guy to get around. you feel great about that. But at left guard, you got John Simpson, who's just fine. Like 4th round pick, a bit of a stiffer guy, really good anchor. You're not going to see a lot of guys go through him, but the foot speed, the hand placement, it's just not there, and I don't know if it ever will be. I do like Andre James at center. He's almost like trending up. He's a unique player. I do like Andre James. He's been such a pleasant surprise for this offensive line that's been otherwise a wreck. Really kind of earned an opportunity as a no-name. This was one of John Gruden's guys, and when they gave him a contract extension, it was like they gave Andre James like decent starter money at center when he had proved nothing. But clearly he had proved work ethic and everything they wanted to see to know that his ascension was coming, and John Gruden was right about that. He has absolutely stood out as at least a starting caliber center. It hasn't been perfect, but he's been pretty stable in pass protection across the board, and I think he's shown that he's growing as a run blocker and playing with more confidence in that regard as well. So I do like Andre James at center, believe it or not. But the right side of the line here, is there a bigger liability for any playoff team in the league than Alex Leatherwood and Brandon Parker protecting Derek Carr? Like, that just cannot happen. There's, in my mind, there's no world where at some point, whether it's a critical game against the Chiefs or the Chargers with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, or a playoff game, I cannot imagine a situation where these guys don't lose the game for the Raiders. Like, it's just, I know it sounds harsh and blunt, but that's kind of how I feel about this. Like, you cannot have Alex Leatherwood, who has absolutely no idea what he's doing at guard. In fact, he might not even be the starter. He was in a competition at right tackle where he played at Alabama with Brandon Parker. It seems he's lost that competition, which was going to leave him without a job, but then Denzel Good retires, so I imagine he's going to be shifting back to guard. That's only what makes sense. I tried to warn Raiders fans when they drafted this guy that he might be a decent run blocker, but you can't have him on the field in pass pro right away, especially at tackle, but it was equally bad at guard. This guy was an utter liability for them last year, whether it's his hand placement, blitz recognition, foot technique, anchor. He's got none of it. He's worse than a replacement level like lineman. He's awful in pass pro. As a run blocker, I don't mind him. I think he can definitely move people. He has like really highlight blocks, but even there you see some of that lack of awareness and latchability to the point where it does hold him back from time to time. That's a huge red flag. And then you got Brandon Parker next to him at right tackle, who has just, to me, shown no consistent amount of starting caliber play. I know he's played a million games at this point for this team, but he will get beat several times a game. He's not a good run blocker. He's someone that should be a swing tackle, and he's your starting tackle. It's a lot of problems here, man, from left guard over to right tackle, and it almost gets worse as you go. So that's the projected starting line for me. It might not be. You might get Jermaine Illuminor to start. Illuminor, to me, is a better player than Alex Leatherwood. It's just a matter of, do they go with kind of the journeyman guy that's never held onto a starting job in Illuminor, or Alex Leatherwood, who's just a former first-round pick. You know, they want to hope that he can become more. They do draft Dylan Parham in the 3rd round. He's kind of your saving grace, hopefully. He is an undersized guy. I don't know how well he fits a power run game, at least as a guard, where he's pulling and all that. To me, he was always more of a wide zone type of player. I wouldn't mind him at center. Maybe you kick Andre James over. I don't know. He's not really getting reps with the ones right now. We have that training camp sample size now to kind of know a little bit more. I do think he'll be in the competition, and for Raiders fans' sake, you pray to God he beats out Alex Leatherwood, and you just make Alex Leatherwood your swing tackle. It just I don't know if that's going to happen right now. he to me is a really talented player. I had a second to a third round grade on him, and I did like that pick, and he could help you here. I don't think he could get you out of the 32nd ranking here, but that's obviously the hope, is that he can start. They're actually listing right now Lester Cotton as the starting right guard. I don't know how long that's going to last. He was, I think, an undrafted pickup, someone that was Alex Leatherwood's teammate at Alabama. Very similar to John Simpson, just kind of that plodding type of power guard, a people mover up front, but unproven entirely, has basically never played. Alex Barr started some games for the Bears, but it wasn't pretty. You got Honus Grasu's kind of a backup center type. They do draft Thayer Munford out of Ohio State. I didn't see much there. Jackson Barton maybe can make the team, but gosh, it's the worst O-line in the league. And at least you've got a rock at left tackle to hopefully build some of these pieces around you. But it is kind of hard to see this not eventually holding this team back at some point, right? As I mentioned, it's going to be a bit of a matchup-dependent offense here. I do rank them 13th overall for offense. Kind of makes sense. You've got the best group of weapons. You've got the worst group of pass blocking. Pretty good play calling. So how good's your quarterback at that point? 13th. They rank 13th overall. It's not that simple, but I don't think it's a total coincidence either. So 13th for overall offense. It's going to be a really good group. If the O-line can take some strides forward, you will, I think, end up with a top 10 offense here, but that's a pretty major if based on the roster talent that they have there. And I do think that Denzel Good retirement hurts. I think they'd be smart to look at the trade market. And maybe they can go get Tevin Jenkins, who just kind of became available from Chicago potentially. Or I almost said give Denver a call about Graham Glasgow, but I don't think they're going to help you out there. Like, you might be able to pick up a veteran there before the season starts. And if it does, that would be significant to basically not have Alex Leatherwood starting, because I think that's a major issue for them right now. But should be a pretty freaking good offense. And in those games where you're not going against elite pass rushes, I still think with Derek Carr's very good quarterback and these weapons, you're going to get some fireworks. And there's going to be a lot of weeks where this looks like a top 10 offense. It's just that O-line, man. So let's now shift to the defensive side of the ball, because I do think they're going to need some help if they're going to reach their expectations this year. This offense isn't going to be able to do everything for them. And it's a fascinating defense as well. It's almost a matchup-dependent defense as well, where you have a really good edge rush duo up front that allows them to have the 8th ranked pass rush in the league, and then kind of a lot of meh and a lot of questions after that. So let's start with the identity of this defense. It's those edge rush duo, that edge rush duo with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. Who I don't want to say single-handedly make this a top half defense in the league, but pretty dang close. You have Max Crosby, the most productive pass rusher in all of football last year. I think you can make a case that he was a more impactful defensive player than the guy that ended up actually winning Defensive Player of the Year last season. I don't think he's going to continue that. He had a really crazy run of facing backup caliber tackles, but that doesn't mean he's going to not be effective. He had 25 more pressures than the next guy down. So I still think he's going to be a top 5 to 7 edge rusher in football next year. I'm not expecting 100 plus pressures again, because there's only a handful of edge players that even had a single season with that in the last 10 years. But regardless, I did a video on Max Crosby and why he's so freaking talented, because he has get off, he has length, he has pass rush moves that he's really refined. He's got a spin move, a swim move, and he can go speed to power. He's missing a little bit of bend off the edge, but man, he is a dominant edge rusher. He got the bag, and an absolute congratulations to Max Crosby, who at a certain point in time I thought was a really overrated player. because his sack totals didn't match his pressure numbers. But now it's almost flipped where he's getting less sacks than you would expect based on how consistently he gets after the quarterback. So you're seeing those double teams come his way. You're seeing the impact he has on the game. And that's the starting point for this entire defense. Opposite of him is now Chandler Jones, who I think is a more consistent impact on the game than Yannick Ngakoue was. I don't know if Chandler Jones is going to have as many sacks as Ngakoue ended up getting, because Ngakoue is one of those rushers that when he wins quick and gets home almost immediately. Chandler Jones is a more methodical rusher. He doesn't have that speed to the quarterback that a Yannick Ngakoue has. But as far as overall pass rush ability, I think he's a moderate upgrade from what they got in Yannick Ngakoue last year. He has been trending down a little bit and was helped significantly by the most dominant defensive performance of any game last season, which was week 1 against the Titans, where he had 5 sacks and just took over that game. After that, he kind of disappeared for a few weeks and then picked it back up at the end of the year. They're paying him pretty major money here. I don't know if 2 years from now they're going to be happy that they gave him what they did, but for this year, I do think he's going to provide not just like a great number 2, but he is still a kind of a low-end number 1, in my opinion, on his own right. And now you have him opposite of one of the most productive edge rushers in college football, in all of football. So it's an elite edge rush duo. Let's just go with top 3 for now, because obviously the Chargers are the best. But yeah, these guys are going to make some noise, and they're going to elevate everything on this defense, as you can see. The thing is, like, why they're not ranking top 3 for pass rush is there's not a whole lot other than those two. You'd love to see a little bit more interior pressure. I like the Bilal Nichols signing. He's a powerful, quick dude, and I think he'll be solid here coming over from Chicago if he can get healthy. He's currently on the PUP. You have Jonathan Hankins, who will play a decent amount of pass rush snaps. He's just a nose tackle, though. He's not going to give you much as a rusher. Vernon Butler, the NFL freaking loves this guy. They always have, but he's never really been a great run defender for how big he is, and he's never been a productive pass rusher. Has some get off and some size, some pocket pushing ability, but nothing special there. Neil Farrell, Tyler Lancaster, more run defender types. They do bring in Matthew Butler from Tennessee. He's an athlete, maybe someone to keep an eye on, but I don't know how much you're going to get from him in year 1. If Andrew Billings makes the team, he might be their second best interior rusher as a pocket pusher, but he's faded away. So, you know, it's that lack of interior rush that is going to hold this team back a little bit from a pass rush perspective, making this team a little bit more matchup dependent as well with the pass rush too. Like, if you go against a really good tackle duo, how much are you going to get up the middle? It is a question. As far as the edge depth goes, and you're hoping you don't have to really see a ton of these guys, at least on pass rush downs, they do have some pieces here. You've got Clelin Ferrell, who maybe even could slide inside, by the way, and help out that interior rush. He could beef up and gain some weight and maybe play a little bit of that Leonard Williams role. It's something to keep an eye on there for Ferrell, former number 4 overall pick. He's solid. He's got pass rush moves. He has a nice first step, but just not a great athlete, so he can't generate a lot of speed to power, and he doesn't have a lot of, quickness to win inside or speed and bend around the edge. So he kind of is what he is as an edge rusher, with potentially, some upside as a 3-tech on later downs, play a little 5-tech on early downs, someone that can relieve Chandler Jones. I think he's going to have a better year this year than he did last year. And then Malcolm Kuntz. Kuntz is ideal for that kind of outside backer here in this defense, someone that has really nice athleticism to be able to drop into coverage, someone that I think will be very comfortable in a 2-point stance and has some of that bend and quickness from the edge. I got my eye on him to maybe be very efficient for this defense. Not going to get a ton of snaps, but when he's out there, just keep an eye on Malcolm Kuntz, who showed some flashes last year in under 100 snaps. That's really your edge depth. The only other guy I think I'm going to note there is Tua's cousin from Notre Dame. Is totally that hybrid defensive end type who I think could really stand out as someone that they want to play as that kind of 4 tech or even a 5 tech on rundowns. So 8th for pass rush. And then when you get to the coverage unit, it's fine. There's some stuff I like here with some pretty major question marks as well. I don't hate the linebacker duo. I really don't. I rank them 18th, so kind of right in the middle there. Perriman, for me, had a really nice year last year, not just in run defense. I felt like he played his role in coverage really well. And he's that thumping type. He's just that physical linebacker, but it shows in just like hook zones. He can drop 5 yards and keep everything in front of him, and he'll come downhill, be a really secure tackler, averaged like 8 yards per completion against, which makes sense. A lot of 5-yard completions with maybe a couple times he got exposed on a crossing route and he just didn't have the speed to hang with it. So I think he's fine in coverage. He is what he is, especially when you have a Divine Diablo next to him. Divine Diablo, really fun pick. One of my guys in the 2021 draft, and he had to fight for playing time ahead of some higher paid linebackers, KJ Wright and Corey Littleton. He very clearly by year's end was the best cover linebacker they had. And it makes sense, right? He's a guy that played a lot of safety, kind of wing linebacker hybrid type for Virginia Tech. And I love him in this role as a weak side backer. He can even play a little bit of that Jabril Peppers role for this defense because he is fast and he has played some safety. So you could even get so creative with him where you trick defenses into thinking that he's just a normal linebacker, and then you could just drop him into a 2 shell. Like, he has the speed to legitimately run cover 2 over the top or a quarters assignment. Like, you can do some really creative stuff with him. I don't know if Graham is going to tap into that, but really versatile cover player. I think picked up this defense really well, and you saw him in some of those cover 3 match assignments really turn his head and run with some speed down the field. And I think he's an ascending player, a bit of an under-the-radar potential star cover linebacker who I'm really excited. He's going to have to fend off Jayon Brown, who was a nice signing. He's a good cover linebacker. But as long as he can impress this new staff, I think he wins the starting job, and Jayon Brown instantly becomes one of the best backup cover backers, just backup linebackers in general in the league. Another guy with a ton of speed and good instincts and coverage. So, like I said, I like this linebacker room. Not a whole lot worth noting behind that. With Kenny Young and Micah Kaiser, a couple former Rams. But yeah, solid linebacker room with definitely potential to ascend with how highly I feel about Divine Diablo. Then in the secondary, let's start with these corners. So 3 to me, starting caliber corners set to go here. Or at least you hope set to go, because Trayvon Mullen, coming off a serious injury last year, someone that has struggled to stay healthy, still listed on the PUP. It's potentially the biggest red flag for this team other than the offensive line is what are you getting from these perimeter corners? Because you feel pretty good about Nate Hobbs in the slot, who we'll talk about, but you've got Trayvon Mullen there, who I would just say has been up and down. I like Trayvon Mullen. I think in a cover 3 heavy system like this, a system that he didn't get a full year to play in last year, there was a lot of cover 3 with Gus Bradley. No reason he can't establish himself as a good starting caliber corner if he stays healthy, which again is a major if. So just a wild card there with Mullen. And even Rock Ya-Sin has been very up and down. Reminds me a lot of a young sort of maybe a little bit of Marcus Peters, but even more than that, I would say a young Josh Norman, actually, where really nice ability from zone coverage to read the quarterback's eyes and kind of bait the QB and make a lot of splash plays in coverage, interceptions, break on balls, like that kind of stuff. but just the athleticism to go man coverage isn't all there. He's a decent athlete, decent in press, but not a consistent man guy. If you want to go quarters, I don't know if he has that hip flexion and ability to really snap onto routes quickly and convert into man coverage. And even in zone, that mentality that he has shown to be a little bit up and down, but he did have his best year for the Colts last year. Someone heading into a contract year now on a new team. Certainly a question mark, but a player I like. So there's your outside duo, at least for now. You've got Nate Hobbs plugged in as the slot guy. Now, I do think Nate Hobbs has the tools to potentially play outside as well. I don't think he's a slot-only player, but he was really good from the slot as a rookie. Was one of the most pleasant surprises of any day 3 pick last year. And someone that has excellent zone IQ. I loved him as a outside corner at Illinois, where he played a ton of cover 2, kind of that lurking soft squat on the outside, and it translated into the slot. He's got quickness. He's an excellent physical run defender as well, so that's why they like him in the slot. But, you know, if you can't get Mullen healthy, maybe you are better off with Phillips in the slot or Amik Robertson in the slot, and you can kick Hobbs outside. So I think he could handle that. I can't think of any reason why he couldn't play outside corner. In fact, even reminds me a little bit of a young Casey Hayward, who they had on a cover 3 heavy defense last year. If you remember, Green Bay had pigeonholed him as a slot guy, but he actually showed to be better on the outside. I don't see why Hobbs couldn't handle that. So some flexibility there with this depth if Trayvon Mullen can't stay healthy. They bring in Anthony Averett, who played in more of a man-heavy defense for Baltimore, never fully clicked. Hard to know where his zone feel is at these days, but a good athlete, third-round pick who kind of stepped up decently well with all those injuries in Baltimore last year. Darius Phillips, to me, is very interesting. Has basically always been a solid player when he's been asked to play, but the Bengals kind of replaced him after a breakout year with Mike Hilton in the slot, and he didn't have anywhere to go for a secondary that stayed healthy last year. So someone that I think still might have his best football ahead of him. And as I mentioned, if you have an injury to Trayvon Mullen, I think their best secondary would actually be Phillips in the slot with Hobbs on the outside, because I don't see Averett as much of a slot player. Amik Robertson has struggled to click in the NFL, someone that had really good college tape but undersized. Might not just have it for the next level. And then some veteran presence there. Nothing too noteworthy after that. But there's worse groups of corners in the league, and certainly better groups of corners as well. I think if this group can stay healthy, they could become an interesting ascending group of corners, because these guys are all, I think, under 25 years old, and all of them are relatively high upside. So I don't hate the group. The safeties throw a wrench in this thing, because I love Trayvon Merrick and hate Jonathan Abram. I think Merrick was a steal when they got him, and plugged right in as a deep safety in cover 3 and did his job valiantly. A true rangy free safety who will be able to do a lot of that stuff here. And he can come downhill and tackle. Like, he can definitely go man coverage. Did a lot of that quarters stuff at TCU, so he's comfortable doing that stuff. Wasn't asked to do it a ton last year, kind of coming down a little closer, converting into man coverage. He can handle that if and when they ask him of it. So an ascending young star safety. Love Trayvon Merrick. Jonathan Abram, on the other hand, continues to be, in my opinion, a walking liability. Someone that has no coverage instincts at all, someone that lacks the fluid ability to run man coverage, someone that, technically has long speed but has never shown good range and ability to read the quarterback's eyes and be a playmaking cover player. He has his benefits when it comes to team morale and run defense, but when it comes to coverage, I want him off the field, and teams will be smart to pick on him. So another major question mark there. You have some depth. Daron Harmon could be someone that helps you neuter John Abram and how much he can hurt you in coverage. Tyree Gillespie as well. Really fun 4th round pick. super athletic dude. I think already a better cover player than John Abram. We'll see what this staff thinks of Gillespie, and I think we will see some 3 safety packages as well. In theory, I will say John Abram could come down and play that Jabril Peppers role, but I think Divine Diablo and Perryman already here complicate some of that. So certainly excited to see how Patrick Graham uses these safeties, because it's a decently deep group. You even have Matthias Farley, who might even be a better strong safety straight up than Jonathan Abram, a veteran, 30 years old there. Definitely some flexibility, some different packages that they can move around and basically help Abram from getting exposed in coverage and just let him fly around and hit people, because that's all he wants to do. As I mentioned, a very interesting pass defense here. They rank 16th. I mean, you got an elite edge duo, some interesting pieces that could grow, but I don't see this being a game-changing defense. I think they're going to be good because the pass rush is going to be good, and that just gives you a nice floor. But I just don't see all of these guys clicking in year one in what's a pretty complex defense on the back end, to the point where this is like some top 10 defense. And there might be some weeks, if they can block up front, that this defense is looking similar to the last couple of years, where they can have some weeks where they get lit up. But I think they're heading in the right direction for sure. Run defense for me as well is not a huge strength for this team. I'm not necessarily worried about it. I think you have the bodies up front, whether it's Jonathan Hankins, who's still a good veteran nose tackle. I mentioned some of these pieces, Vernon Butler, Tyler Lancaster, big-bodied guys that are going to eat up space up front, do their job just fine. Not high-impact run defenders, but are decent rotational pieces. You've got Neil Farrell, who they draft in the 4th round. Really like that pick. I've got an eye on him. I don't know how much playing time he's going to get, but I really liked his impact. He, I think, will eventually overtake Jonathan Hankins as that starting nose tackle here, but I don't know if that's going to be in year 1 or not. And then you have Bilal Nichols in there too, who's going to be more of a kind of 3 technique, might even play a little bit of that defensive end, 4 technique, 5 technique, just on the tackle. He's 6'4", 295, like pretty close to what Leonard Williams is, and he's got decent speed. So like, I do like that position for him, and another player that I've kind of got an eye on to see maybe he has a career year in a scheme that fits his skill set well. So you have decent pieces up front, no game changers. The edge run defense should be pretty damn good. You got Max Crosby's such a high effort, strong dude. What's commendable about Crosby is not only did he take a step as a pass rusher last year, he took a massive step as a run defender as well. His entire game elevated immensely last year. Chandler Jones has kind of dropped off as a run defender. Not unfair, I think, to speculate that that's age and business decisions, basically. Will be able to make stops when he sets his heart to it, though. But I also think Clelin Ferrell is going to be a nice relief for Chandler Jones. Physically speaking, pretty comparable as far as size and strength. Ferrell has had good years as a run defender. Last year at a falling out and kind of disappeared, but I think that's a good role for him as an early down run defender who can basically, I guess, help Chandler Jones stay fresh for passing downs and make it so like, all right, Chandler, we're going to cut your run defense snaps in half, but when we're out there, we want you to try like the good old days, you know? So nice compliment there. Yeah, that's your front. They rank 23rd for D-line run defense. Love these linebackers. They're a top 10 linebacking run defense for me. Denzel Perriman's awesome. He's a stud. Just play diagnostics, size, willingness to thump, stack and shed, you name it. He is a very, very good run defending linebacker. And then Divine Diablo is getting there. Showed a lot of flashes. When he sees outside zone and he can really just run sideline to sideline, or screens are another good example. Like when he sees it and he goes, it's beautiful. He's a long strider with this gaping wingspan, a secure tackler. He's a nice compliment to Denzel Perriman because they don't need to ask him to play up on a guard and, you know, get nasty in the trenches. He can just kind of be a fluid havoc player, if you will, as a run defender, an agent of chaos, if you will, just fly around and try to make plays. So I like his role here. He's not some great block shedder or someone that can hold his own against an offensive lineman. It's just not his game, and that's fine. Again, it's why you complement him with a Denzel Perriman there. You've got some depth. You got Jayon Brown, who's, I think that's part of his falling out in Tennessee, was never a super disciplined run defender. And I think that's another nod for Divine Diablo, is that it's not like Jayon Brown's going to be some great run defender for them. So I do think Jayon Brown's more of a backup here, but certainly nice depth to have. Kenny Young, Micah Kaiser, these guys have a lot of experience. They're nice 4th, 5th linebackers to have. Keep an eye, I guess, on Luke Masterson as an undrafted pickup for run defense. But yeah, there's your linebackers, nice group. And then on the back end, just kind of average across the board, honestly. Nate Hobbs, I would say, is the one guy that's more of an impact here. Really good at like diving through potential blockers, especially if it's an offensive lineman. He knows like, well, this guy's about to body me, so I'm just going to get low and try to dip around this block. And sometimes it will put him entirely out of position, but other times you'll see splash plays. So maybe understanding that a little bit better and just showing more consistency and sample size of him being a good run defender is always good. So like what you're getting from Nate Hobbs in the slot. As far as the rest of these guys, the perimeter corners are just fine. Rock Ya-Sin specifically is pretty physical. Trayvon Mullen, I think, could show a little bit more. But with the safeties, you've got Trayvon Merrick, who's good coming downhill, a secure tackler, but really never a box player. That's actually the reason I had Javon Holland ahead of him in my my pre-draft rankings, because I thought they were both really good cover players, but I thought Javon Holland was just as good in coverage, but was so much more instinctive and nasty around the line of scrimmage than Trayvon Merrick, who's just much more comfortable in space. So it is what it is, and they're going to be in a scheme here where he's basically always in a single high shell and isn't going to have to play around the box too much, so it's totally fine. Jonathan Abram, on the other hand, he loves to hit. He provides a decent impact because I guess he has that fear factor or whatever it is that Raiders fans love about him. He's a headhunter. He's constantly out of position. He misses a bunch of tackles. He's an entirely undisciplined run defender, but once a week you might get that splash run defense play that does fire everybody up, or maybe it does force a fumble, or it is nice to have one of those disruptors, but I wish he was more disciplined against the run. I wish he was a better tackler, and I wish he could cover somebody. So if you couldn't tell by now, I'm not a fan of Jonathan Abram. Hope he has a big year. I don't see it. As far as DB depth, it's DB depth for run defense. There's no one terribly notable or problematic in either direction. So they rank 23rd for run defense. They're right kind of in a middle cluster. I don't think it's some dominant run defense. I think they have enough pieces to be solid against the run. So that rounds out what ends up being the 18th ranked defense. I think we will see some nice improvements with this team as far as creativity with the defense. Not that Gus Bradley did a bad job last year, but I think the scheme will be nice, and I think the pass rush is going to be really nice. Need to see some strides with the secondary there. I think they have like top 15 potential, but not too much more than that. Just because I think they have too many players that have too far to go. But yeah, it'll be a fun defense to watch for sure. So to recap all this a little bit before we take a look at the schedule, again, 13th for offense, 18th for defense, brings them to 14th overall. Makes sense, right? They are in that great tier of special teams. They would be in the elite tier if they still had Rich Bisaccia. It just throws a little bit of a wrinkle in there, but it's still going to be an outstanding special teams in my opinion, especially in the kicking game. You got a couple of really nice, kicker and punter there. So should be in good shape on that side of the ball as well. So the recap overall, I'm bringing it back. Got a couple requests to bring strengths and weaknesses back at the end of the video. So for me, their strengths are an exciting coaching staff. You've got an elite group of weapons and an elite edge rush duo. So those are two premium positions with edge rush and receiver to really emphasize and build upon and make the rest of the team better, hopefully. With the weaknesses, you have an immense amount of turnover with the roster and the staff. It's just going to invite high variance. It is what it is. You have an offensive line that could be an absolute disaster and cost this game critical games. You have a defense, to me, that is going to be sometimes a little bit overly dependent on that edge rush. If they face teams that have good tackle duos that can just kind of block these guys up, how much can they basically be anti-fragile and adapt and counter and win in different ways? I don't know if they have that level of impact anywhere else other than with those edge rushers. And then this transitions well. They have a brutal schedule here as they play in the AFC Best this year. Let's take a look. Another new addition to the series here. Thank you, everybody, for your amazing feedback. I'm proud to kind of listen to you guys and continuously improve these videos as we go. We are adding a couple new categories here to potentially better capture my win projection for these teams. Before we just had likely win, 50-50 game, and likely loss. Now we have added more of a middle ground there with a game where you're favorited in, but it's no gimme, and a game where you're an underdog, but certainly a winnable game. So you have the AFC West. You're going to be underdogs in every AFC West game. I do believe that. And I honestly think if this team can go 2-4 in their division, that's a big win for them. Now, you do get the AFC South, so you absolutely have to beat the Texans and the Jags. You probably got to beat the Titans, and maybe you got to virtually sweep the AFC South, I think, to have a realistic shot at this, because they also play the NFC West. As I've mentioned, these Western teams, we're going to get an insane amount of great games here. So they're going to have to play the Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals are no slouch either. They do get the Cardinals early though, when Hopkins is still suspended. So that's a nice little draw there. But inversely, Cliff Kingsbury's better at the beginning of the year, so who knows? Yeah, it's a freaking brutal schedule, man. I have them with 3 games being likely wins and only being favorited in 6 total games. So even if you can win the 6 games you're favored in, which is still a pretty big if, you're going to have to pull off 4 or 5 upsets this year to make the playoffs alone. It's going to be a tough ride for the Raiders. I think it's possible for them to do it. I actually have their win projection coming over their Vegas over-under at 8.5 wins. But I wouldn't bet that with this schedule. That's why the over-under is so low. This is a 9.5, 10-win team that has the hardest schedule in the league possibly. So that's no secret for Raiders fans. They know that they're going to have some pretty special moments. They're going to need Derek Carr to really dig deep and pull this thing off. It's going to be a really freaking fun team to watch. There's some massive superstar players on this team, and they're going to be in a lot of fun competitive games, but is it going to be enough at the end of the day? I'm saying no, but I'm not betting against it necessarily. So there is our Raiders deep dive. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I appreciate you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below, Raiders fans, where was I right? Where was I wrong? What do you guys feel about this ranking of 14 for the Raiders? But that's all we got. Again, please do hit that like button. If you're still here and you haven't hit it yet, it's a huge help to me. If we could get this up to 2,000, 2,500 likes, that's only like a quarter to an eighth of you guys watching. So I'd really appreciate it if you could just take a moment. Really helps. Make sure you subscribe as well. But until our next deep dive, cheers, and we'll see you then.